Welcome to Inside the Indians, your source for insider information on the Tribe. Stay with us as we bring you the latest about the players, managers, and people behind the scenes at Victory Field. Now here's your host, the longtime broadcast voice of the Indians, Howard Kellman.
Hi everybody and welcome to Inside the Indians. Today we'll speak with manager Brian Esposito, coach John Schwind, and relief pitcher Blake Weiman. Back with Espo in a moment. Esposito, the manager of the Indianapolis Indians, our first guest on Inside the Indians. And Espo, we talk about the work you've done with players. One of the guys, and he could be the most valuable player on this team, he's played so great, is Pablo Reyes. Let's get your thoughts on him.
Pablo is a really talented player. He brings a lot of tangibles to the game. There's the element of speed for him. There's the element of some defensive versatility and capabilities. He's a fine outfielder. He can play left, center, right. He's able to come onto the dirt and post up at shortstop. He's able to play a really good second base. And we played him at third base a little bit last year. We haven't got him many reps over there this year. But he's a guy that's got a lot of versatility, and he swings a mean bat. He's a little guy, but he swings hard, and he's able to impact the baseball. So he's a dangerous player with some speed, some talent, and some versatility. I had Pablo when he was very young in A-ball, and to watch him progress and watch him work and go about his business and just his maturity as a player and how he's grown. He did some really good things. Last year at the big league level with an opportunity in September, he broke camp with the club, and he was kind of using a different role, exclusively, coming off the bench more often than not. And it kind of humbled him out a little bit, and it brought him some different challenges, which was fun to watch him transition from those challenges into a AAA season here. And he's been rebounding from that. He's starting to really get his groove right now, and he's swinging the bat really well and playing some really good defense for us. So I would expect him to continue to grow as a player, and we'll see him in the big leagues at some point soon.
I think with your communication with him, with the work you've done with him, the things you say, you've done wonders for his confidence, I think.
Yeah, I think it just boils down to telling these guys the hard truth. A lot of times people, when you think about confidence, a lot of people think that you need to give them words that are going to help push them forward, and it's always, positivity. I think a lot of times what will set you free is hearing the truth. If you have guys that are falling short, especially a player as talented as he is, he needs to hear the truth. He needs to hear when the effort is not where it needs to be, or where he's kind of feeling sorry for himself a little bit based on the results. And with that, I think the hard truth a lot of times will put them in a position to be receptive so that you can build them back up and push that confidence back into them and let them know that they're a better player than what they're exhibiting right now. And I think that's the balance of it, is just speaking truth to them and letting them know where they stand, where they're at, and what they're showing you to allow us an opportunity to put them back in that position to succeed again.
I mentioned the work you've done with him. When the season started last year and he joined the club, nobody really talked about him. Nobody knew much about him. You didn't hear a word about him. But yet, the work you've done with him, the work he put in, and his talent, it's been a great story.
Yeah, like I said, I knew him from when he was younger, and I followed him, and I've taken a liking to Pablo, both on and off the field. I've done a lot of things with him. We've had a lot of conversations about life off the field and where he's from and what he does. Again, you talk about what being a coach is. It's seeing those finer things in a player that maybe somebody else doesn't see, and you just got to find ways to extract it out. Pushing him was the biggest thing, telling him to be the best player in the field every day. Some things that we take for granted a lot is that we just assume that these players are going to roll out of bed and go out there and try to be the best ball player they could be. Our job is to make sure that these players aren't falling short of that on a daily basis or a nightly basis. It's hard to show up every day. It's one of the hardest things to do, is show up every day. And, I just stay committed. Our staff stays committed to pushing these guys to make sure that being the best player on the field is on the forefront of everything that they do.
Under the title of Confidence is Everything, he started in the big leagues, was optioned to Indianapolis, wasn't quite where he should have been. He started 4 for 42. We went to Columbus Memorial Day weekend. He got a few hits. He hasn't stopped hitting since then.
Yeah, so, you know, I just remember that one of my plans with him after that slow start was to see if what we could do to simplify it, and we put on a hit and run or two. And we eliminated the thought of him having to thump and drive the ball in the gap or hit homers, which is what, you know, can happen to a young player that starts the year in the big leagues and gets sent out. When they're not having that type of production, they think that that's what they need to do in order to get their self back. I wanted to go the other direction and say, hey, let's simplify this. All I want you to do is just touch the ball and do your job. You know, if you put a ball in play right now on the ground, we're in a really good spot and you did your job. And from there, the rest was history. Then all of a sudden, the Pablo of old started to come back where he was starting to get on top of some high fastballs and drive them out of the yard. He had that stretch where I believe it was, you know, 4 or 5 homers in you know, 6 days. And that's what we saw last year as well. You know, you just got to be able to find what works for a certain player and what gets them locked back in. And we found the key to his success right there.
Now, another guy who's been a great story, been here a little less than a month, James Marvel, right-handed pitcher. Tell us your thoughts on him.
Yeah, you know, I always knew Marvel as being a really smart guy. He's got a good head on his shoulders, work ethic off the charts, preparation off the charts, and I finally got him under our roof to be able to see him go to work. And it's just one of those guys. It's a pleasure to watch him show up every day because he is so meticulous and so goal-oriented, and you know, a lot of people will talk about the process and how you trust on it and all this kind of stuff. And you know, he's a guy that you know, is just exemplifies what a process looks like. You know, he goes about his business the right way, even down to throwing how his bullpens, you know, in between his starts, where you know he'll go out in his game uniform to make sure that what he's doing on that mound that particular day is as heightened as his focus will be in the game, from the uniform to his pitch selection to what he's looking at, you know, in the batter's box of the lineup that he's about to face, you know, in his next start. So it's been fun to watch him prepare. It's been even more fun to watch him go out and execute his preparation, which is exactly what you want in your process. You want to be able to prepare a certain way, but then take what you prepared for and then be able to execute it is another story. And he's done that, you know. He had that great outing where, you know, he one hit that Syracuse lineup where they came into town and they took us to the woodshed a little bit, and then he duplicated that outing by one hit and shutting them out again at their place. So that's a testament to his process and his work ethic and the head that he's got on his shoulders.
Yes, back-to-back starts against the same team, and most people will tell you that's good for the hitter, seeing a guy 2 times a day.
Yeah, of course. There's some familiarity. There's instant feedback from your prior at bat about 4 or 5 days earlier. So it was great to see. That was a big test for him. It was a big test for us to be able to use him as a model of what it's supposed to look like in between your starts.
Espo, as always, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
That's Brian Esposito, the Indianapolis Indians manager, in his 2nd year with the team as a skipper. Also was a coach in 2013 here. This is the home of the Indians, WHMB, TV 40. Our next guest up inside the Indians. John, we recently went back to Rochester, your hometown. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was a really good experience. It's the first time I've obviously been back home. Didn't get a chance to play there during my career. So it was really fun. Got to have a lot of friends and family and just a lot of memories of playing there when I was younger. So really good time.
Yeah, that town has changed, and unfortunately, in some respects, not for the better, because Eastman Kodak is not the employer that it once was.
Yeah, it's you know, it's sad. A lot of cities in New York, these old manufacturing cities, have kind of declined as stuff's moved towards New York City and different areas across the world. But it's still home, and there's a lot of good spots. You know, I'm from a suburb outside. Probably 20 minutes. But the cool thing is the city started to kind of revamp and rebuild in certain areas, and more companies are kind of taking over. And even Kodak has started to grow a little bit in the last year or two. So hopefully it starts to become the booming city that it used to be. And again, it's still a really great spot, really friendly people, and it was a lot of fun to be back.
Growing up there, you want to be a baseball player growing up, it's got to be a challenge with the weather the way it is so much of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I was lucky enough to play multiple sports and have three older brothers that I all were older, so I was constantly trying to follow in their footsteps. So played hockey, played soccer, played baseball, and really it was just season to season. And it wasn't. I loved baseball, and that was something that I aspired to do growing up, but it was really just on to the next sport every single season. So something I still love to do in the off season, and still skate and still playing leagues back home. I love the climate and I love the weather change, and something that you don't experience everywhere, but grateful that I did.
Now, one theory I've heard, and Rajay Davis, who's from Connecticut, is an example of that. He played here about 11 years ago. We saw him in Syracuse, got a lot of time in the big leagues, is that players from a Rochester or Connecticut can be late bloomers. Because unlike, say, someone from California or Florida, you're not getting the chance to play ball as much as they are when they're in high school and college and so forth.
Totally agree. I think it's, as he said, and talked about that, I agree with it in terms of most of the players that you're getting from the Northeast, number one, haven't played a ton, so risk of injury is usually a little bit lower. But also I think a lot of them tend to be a little more athletic because we're playing different sports. We're training different movements. We're not just solely stuck on baseball movements, and so we can develop in different ways. But in terms of the game of baseball, yeah, it can take a little bit longer as you actually start to make it your profession and career.
You raised a great point, and I've heard this from other coaches too over the years as times have changed and we've gotten more and more into specialization. It's great for a baseball player to play basketball and football too and use other parts of the body.
I agree. There's a lot of strengths that don't necessarily get I guess maybe not strengths I'm talking about, but there's a lot of different skills that can be learned in different sports, and not so much specialized with just baseball movements and baseball specific things. And I think sometimes that can't always be taught on a baseball field. It has to be taught in other realms, in other sports and other different activities that you can train and do. And something that I know definitely helped me during my career, and I think has helped a lot of people from that region, be able to succeed and actually get to the big leagues. There's usually something about their game that fascinates people, and I don't always think that that's developed necessarily on the baseball field.
Tell us your thoughts. It's been your first year here. Tell us the way things have gone for you.
Yeah, they're going good, and we're learning every day and helping these guys and hopefully impacting them and giving them a chance to get to their their dreams and what they're what they're aspiring to do and trying to make themselves and their family proud. So really just try to be an avenue and teach guys with the knowledge that I have, and and at the same time also be able to help them on the field and assist in whatever way I can. Tell us about your work with hitting coach Ryan Long. We've done a lot of different things this year, in terms of helping players out, and have had a lot of different movements. So it's been challenging at times in terms of cementing different guys' routines. But I think the main thing is we're trying to improve them to help the major league club. So if we're able to just be a small token of that and give them the necessary tools that they need to succeed at the next level, we're going to keep trying to do that, and hopefully more and more go up. And as the season goes on and we get closer to September, hopefully we can give guys a chance to get there. You were also the Indianapolis Indians third base coach. That can be a demanding job and a challenging job. Absolutely. It's not. It's something obviously that I was put into at this level that I'm fortunate enough that they trust me to do it. And I feel comfortable over there, and I try to train just like a player would with my preparation and making sure I understand what I need to be prepared for each series. And then off of that, just go off of the situation and go off of knowledge and how the game's telling you to react. So it's been something that obviously you learn throughout the year and get better at, and something that I hope I can do in the future and continue to help teams win. Before Jimmy Leland managed in the big leagues, and I think he belongs in the Hall of Fame, he was the third base coach with the White Sox. And I remember talking to him. I said, "What's a challenging thing?" He said to me, "When you have runners at first and second, and there's a base hit to right field, right center, because you're dealing with two base runners, and that can be quite challenging." Absolutely. It's having to get the read as soon as you can and understanding a lot of different other factors. How hard is the ball hit? Who's the right fielder? Who's on second base? Who's on first base? Can the guy in second base run? How many outs are there? So all these things are constantly being played in your mind, and you're trying to review them as the game goes on. And really, you go through checklists. You know, sometimes they're subconsciously, sometimes you have to make them conscious because you're thinking of you know, different things, and you know, it also there's a lot of other things that go into it. You know, where are we at in the order? You know, are we towards the bottom of the order and we might not get another chance? Are we late in the game where we need the run to score? Just a lot of different things that you learn, and obviously Jim Leland did it at the biggest level, so he saw a lot of games and a lot of situations, and as you continue to do it, I know that the reads will get easier. But as long as you have a reason and you're prepared, I think that's the main thing. If you have a reason, then you can live with the result. And if you made a mistake, you acknowledge it, you move on, and you get better the next time.
As always, John, thank you so much. Keep up the great work. That's John Schwind, Indianapolis Indians third base and assistant hitting coach on the home of the Indians, WHMP TV Sports. Indianapolis Indians pitcher Blake Weiman, our next guest on Inside the Indians. Blake's done a really good job since coming over, had a stint on the DL. Tell us a little bit about your approach, Blake, and your philosophy of pitching.
Yeah, kind of my go-to is just fill up the zone, get strike one, and work ahead, throw strikes, and change speeds. You know, I'm not going to overpower anyone, and the hitters know that. You know, but getting ahead and trying to throw pitches off of each other and make it as hard as possible for hitters to kind of see what's coming in there. That's kind of my game plan.
What's the difference in your approach if you're starting an inning, nobody on base, as opposed to, let's say there are men on second and third and you're in a jam? What's the difference in your approach?
Slow the game down. I think it's important to kind of execute every pitch, but you got to execute pitches, you know, in big situations like that. Especially as a reliever, you know, you got to keep your team in the game, put up zeros in big innings. You know, the approach should stay the same, Howard. You know, you're trying to get outs no matter what, and you're trying to throw strikes and make hitters miss and keep them off your stuff. So, you know, I guess mentally you just try and slow the game down and keep it as manageable as possible, but you're still trying to get outs.
You mentioned getting ahead. That's the name of the game, get ahead of the hitters. But with men on second and third, let's say they're the tying runs, go-ahead runs, is it so much to try to get ahead there, or is to make a pitch and go after a hitter's weakness?
Yeah. It kind of depends on the situation. You know, have you faced this guy before? Do you know, is he going to chase early in the count? You know, can you expand? Stuff like that. And it just depends on the situation and how can you attack this guy's weakness and get out of the inning. You know, and also, you know, trying to get a ground ball, a strikeout. It depends on how many outs there are, and there's a lot of things that go into it. But, yeah, there's definitely a lot.
Tell us the story behind you signing a contract with the Pirates.
Yeah. I went to the University of Kansas for 3 years, and my first 2 years I was actually a starter there. And they decided to make me a bullpen pitcher my junior year, and I developed a slider that kind of helped me get to the next level and get, you know, good Big 12 hitters out. And kind of prove myself, you know, as a good pitcher in that conference. And then I was drafted in the 8th round in 2017 by the Pirates, and kind of just made my way up to Indianapolis. It's been a fun ride.
How's the caliber of baseball you played at Kansas? Would you compare it to a certain level in the minor leagues?
A lot of guys talk about that. A lot of the college guys kind of discuss that. It's difficult because you got, you know, wood bats and, you know, as opposed to metal bats and stuff like that. And, you know, I can't really compare, but I know the talent was was pretty impressive in the Big 12. I mean, you got guys going in the first, couple of rounds every year. Texas Tech's got great caliber guys. TCU, I mean, you can name them all, but yeah, I mean, it definitely prepared me for pro ball, I would say.
You grew up in the suburbs of Denver. A lot of sunshine in Denver, but it's not warm a lot. So tell us about playing ball growing up in Denver. Was the opportunity always there?
Yeah, it's different. It's not like Arizona kids for sure. You get like 18-19 high school games. So a lot of the games come in travel ball, fall baseball, and I decided to not play other sports in high school because I wanted to focus on baseball primarily and travel for that. And I mean, that's kind of the sacrifice you make in a cold weather state, is trying to get, to your development in other times in spring. Because a lot of times, you don't even get the games you're supposed to play in spring because it's snowing. It was interesting, but.
Well, Blake, great to have you aboard. Thank you so much. And best of luck. That's Blake Weiman on the home of the Indians, WHMB TV 40. To our guests, Brian Esposito, John Schwind, and Blake Weiman. See you next week on Inside the Indians.